All right, everyone. Now it's time to talk a little bit about the Kangaroo court proceedings with Judge Engoron. And really, I mean, you've got 4 different persecutorial witch hunts after Donald Trump. Engoron is trying to put himself aside as uniquely unlikable, I think. And, I mean, one of his competitors is Chutkin. So, I mean, Judge Eileen Cannon at this point looks perfectly fine compared to some of her contemporaries in the let's go get him sense. Orange man bad. Quick, let's wage some more lawfare. Engoron the other day saying, statement that you put out on your website is disallowed by the court. You need to remove it. And publicly it was, but then it was still like on the back end of the website somewhere, like it was gone, but it was still there. And then, of course, the prosecution made the judge aware of this. And the judge is like, this is unacceptable. You must explain why this happened. And they're like, we didn't realize that the statement was still there. Donald Trump explicitly told us to remove it when he issued the partial gag order, you idiot. And Engoron, of course, is a tech expert. He understands that that's still unacceptable and that an average person would know that the statement was technically still there and accessible. And so he fined Donald Trump $5,000. Now, that is meaningless. Donald Trump makes that every 10 minutes probably, and just by sending out fundraising emails. So it's not the problem. The problem is the principle of punishing an individual for insulting or making mean tweets towards the persecution against him. This raises huge First Amendment issues. The First Amendment is meant to be effectively ironclad. Unfortunately, there's no current jurisprudence that actually covers this issue. Did you know this? There is effectively no finalized judicial methodology by which there's a constraint on gag orders pertinent to the workings of the freedom of expression of the person who's accused of some sort of misdoing. It doesn't exist, which means that you have differential enforcement, which is exactly what we're seeing here. And when I use that term, there's a reason. It is the root of all evil within our justice system. It's not the rule, it's whether the rule is applied fairly. So one person steals a car, another person steals a car. Depending on who the judge is, whether the jury is sympathetic, and minutia that doesn't even have anything to do with the fact that a car was stolen and the same charge applies, one person gets a slap on the wrist, you have to give the car back, and you gave it a fender bender, so you're paying for that. I'm giving you 6 months probation so that you can think about what you did. You have to sign in with the probation officer, and you have to do community service. And then the other person, meanwhile, gets 5 years in prison. This happens all of the time. Partially, is the person wealthy enough to afford a good legal defense? If you don't have the ability to, if you go in there with a public defender to defend you, you're probably not going to come out as unscathed as if you can afford a high-class lawyer. Happens all the time. People who are more wealthy are shown more deference in general because for some reason the justice system has decided that they're less of a threat to society. Yeah, I know that you raped a baby, but, you know, you've got a 7-figure salary, so you're less of a flight risk. And you've got more to lose, I guess, you know, and so hopefully, you know, you think better of it. You don't rape any more babies or something. It's preposterous. With Donald Trump, it shows that you can be massively wealthy, and it doesn't even matter, though, anymore within the justice system. All you have to do is ideologically step out of line. Now Engoron is going further. The fine doesn't matter. But Engoron says, and if something like this happens again, we're going to get much more harsh with the punishment. Well, I mean, basically, you're looking for a reason right now to persecute him. Thank you for giving us evidence of exactly what the case in and of itself actually means. It's not meant to deliver justice. It's not meant to address some sort of wrongdoing that had a negative impact on the public. It's simply meant to punish a person who's running for the presidency to drain their finances, to take them off the campaign trail, and to try and tar and feather them with felony charges so that people won't vote for him. That's the entire grift. It seems to be failing. To be clear about what we're doing as a nation right now, we're watching as the deep state plants the seeds of a potentially explosive constitutional crisis in which the newly elected second-term, non-consecutive Grover Cleveland 2.0 President of the United States waltzes out of a jail cell at the day after Election Day and says, hey, I'm back. Yeah, that's not going to cause protests or riots. Leftoids like to burn Wendy's whenever they're mad. It's not going to cause uproar in the courts or in the legislature or anything like that. It won't have any repercussions on our society. Everything, I'm sure, will be fine. I mean, they're poking the gorilla in the monkey cage at this point. You're setting yourselves up for a situation based on virtually all the available evidence I can see politically, in which the retarded vegetable currently running the show loses re-election because he's too stubborn to stand down, and there aren't a whole lot of qualified replacements anyway. You could go with Newsom, but he's from California. There's no home field advantage. He's not the most well-spoken. He's made a number of mistakes that would probably come back to haunt him baggage style in an election against Trump, although I do speculate Newsom probably will be running against Youngkin in 28. That's the most likely matchup right now. Advantage Youngkin, which is probably a good thing. I wouldn't want to imagine a President Gavin Newsom. Talk about a constitutional crisis. Considering the stick up his ass about the militia, he'd be way worse than Joe Biden on that issue. And Engoron now is effectively threatening, though, to put Donald Trump in jail even prior to having been found guilty of a charge. Which Trump, by the way, would probably enjoy. Oh, good. They get to grapple with the problem of what the Secret Service is going to do when I'm sitting in the cell. You've got the problem of, imagine they have like Trump community service. He has to go scrub graffiti. He turned that into a campaign ad. So they can't really do that. Putting him under house arrest won't mean anything. He can summon people to his house for the fundraisers, and the novelty of it again will give him a fundraising surge, able to cover several months of legal expenses, plus all the campaign expenses. I can't really do that. If they put him in jail, it's going to look really, really goddamn hammer-handed, probably backfiring the process, like indicting him in the first place did. His polling has risen and risen over the last 6 months for a reason, and we're not sure what happens with his security detail. Trump, as a former president, for the rest of his life will have to be followed around by several Secret Service agents, especially since he gets additional protection by being the front-runner of the GOP field, presumptive nominee. In a couple of months, he'll be the nominee, effectively. Basically, fucking, you gotta let it go at some point. Well, what are they supposed to do? Do they have to go to jail with him? He's not allowed to be left alone without a security detail. How are you going to coordinate with a jail, by the way? They might not have the ability. Again, there's no specific jurisprudence that covers any of these issues because this has never happened before. We've never prosecuted a former president. You came close with Nixon. That's the closest you got. Ford decided to pardon him. This is everything that's happening right now is totally unprecedented. Indicting, potentially imprisoning Trump, draining him through 4 different legal battles at the same time. Again, while he's campaigning for the presidency as a former president and the presumptive nominee, the dude is 60 fucking points ahead in the GOP field. He has lapped everybody else combined several times over. He will be the nominee unless he dies. And that's basically it. Or as incapacitated, saying he has a stroke and he can no longer make mean tweets because, it's just gobbledygook. Other than that, he'll be the nominee for the Republican Party, and it begins to look like a Banana Republic-style thing where the sitting administration and the Uniparty, really, is trying to persecute the person that they're afraid of through legal means because they're not confident they can stop him any other way. If they were confident that ballot printers going brrr would solve the problem, by the way, they wouldn't be doing this. They would never have allowed the Manhattan DA to bring forth charges. They would have muzzled him. They never would have allowed Letitia James to follow through with her campaign pledge, politically and quite literally, to go after Orange Man, which is quite literally what she said. I'm going to go after Trump if you elect me as Attorney General. Well, she followed through. That would have been a dead campaign promise if they thought they could stop him through other means, because they didn't want to do this. They're doing it out of desperation. Engoron is threatening Donald Trump out of desperation, because he doesn't want Trump coming out and effectively fundraising on the fact that he's being persecuted. The whole idea is to constrain him as much as possible. They're not going to be able to stop him for the primaries. At this point, they're probably aware of that. Therefore, they're pivoting to trying to stop him in the general election. You can expect shenanigans untold in the 24 election. But they're probably going to be unsuccessful anyway. Again, setting us up for a grave constitutional crisis in which they will dogpile the ever-loving shit out of Trump if he decides to correct the situation in any way. Let's put it that way. If Trump decides legal machinations have been weaponized by the federal government, they persecuted me, but they're also persecuting a shit ton of other people, so I'm going to look into it. Oh my god, tyrant! He's trying to take over as dictator. I mean, the stories write themselves. They've already insinuated that before. If he doesn't do anything, then he just has to sit there for 4 years and do nothing, because they're never going to appropriate a penny to anything that he wants. He'll be a lame duck from day one, and if he does do something, they're going to use that as an argument for why he's dangerous. We need to remove him from office immediately. Meanwhile, in the same period, he may have pardoned himself in order to clear out those legal issues and get back to actually doing something, setting up a separate constitutional crisis. I don't see this ending well, honestly. I'm rooting for Donald Trump. I expect that he has a good chance of being reelected based on all the polling and metrics that I see. I hope he is. I hope he does a good job. But the Uniparty is going to be singularly geared towards cock-blocking him every step of the way. Unfortunately, as we've seen with some of the latent TDS sufferers, some of them will actually believe the unipartyist grifters when they tell them that it's Trump's fault. There are still people that blame him because his own House Republicans wouldn't appropriate money for his wall and the judiciary blocked him for a year on using discretionary spending he self-evidently had the right to spend on whatever he wanted if it was even tangentially related to defense. Do you remember that? There's still people that blame Trump for that to this day. Most of them are DeSantis fans. There are fewer and fewer of them, you'll note. That's about all. Peace out.